to kick things off, my name is Angelique Bolding. I am the Director of Business Development at Photify, and today I'm joined by Jorge Garcia, who is all things revenue operations. And today in the past, we've had some really interesting conversations around organizational change management, and most specifically in the areas of training and how to train for success. So it's been a big focus of ours here at Photify, and of course, with our app and our enterprise program. And so thought we'd take some time to just have an open conversation about it, chat about some of the things that we've learned along the way, and more specifically, hopefully gain some insight from others as well. So to kind of kick things off, if you're new and don't really know what organizational change management, the literal definition is it is a framework for managing the effect of new business processes, changes in organizational structure, or cultural changes within an enterprise. So simply put, it's beneficial mostly when change requires people throughout an organization, whether directly or indirectly, to learn new behaviors and skills. So Jorge, to kick things off here, if you want to do another intro about yourself and then maybe dive into some specific situations that you've had where training has been beneficial or when training would have been beneficial in the implementation of software.
Awesome. Yeah. I've been working with Photify for the last few months, I guess, since the beginning of the year, really just like doing a lot of lead generation and setting up meetings and kind of, trying to close some deals as quickly as possible. And I use a series of tools. I use a CRM and then some other tools to sort of find the leads that I'm after. And I think that one of the hardest things to do is really bring on new tools to a company. I think it's intimidating for the employees. And if you don't have the proper training, you often find yourself lost, sort of grabbing for whatever resources you possibly can. And what that does is take away time and energy from the work that you should be doing, which is using these tools to kind of do the work for you. In the past, I've seen, when I've been with companies that have adopted new CRM tools, for instance, and it's been disastrous in implementing them because there's all these little tiny tricks that you should know that you just don't unless you actually have somebody from that company kind of walking you through things. And it's disastrous in the short term, but teams are strong, teams are resilient, and teams end up pulling together and really sort of grabbing whatever knowledge they can and making the tools work to the best of their ability at the moment, which is also kind of exciting and cool. But I always think that extra training is just so valuable and just time saving,
Yeah, and I think you hit on a really good point there too, where, their main job isn't necessarily learning these new programs. They're good at specific things, and you can't always rely on individuals to, take it upon themselves and learn about things on their own. Again, their time is best spent elsewhere. So we've talked about before, kind of meeting people where they're at. And I think that's a really interesting thing to think about, especially in the landscape today, where people don't all learn the same, and they might not have the time to learn in a specific arena. So I guess module, I guess in that way, how has your experience, or what has your experience been in finding what has been successful for how teams have learned best?
I think that having somebody from a company, whenever you're adopting new software, you always have the opportunity to maybe invest a little bit more in a training. And I think that training is so helpful because it kind of gives you a lay of the land, and with that, you can really take off running. For me, that's been always super helpful because, again, getting into it again, right? My strong suit isn't necessarily the newest software that somebody else on the team found and decided that I should be implementing. That's not my strong suit, knowing that software. My strong suit is getting people on the phone and, talking to them about a product that I believe in, right? Because I can get passionate about it and I can just do my best. That's my opportunity to shine. But figuring something out that I know nothing about, that's really tricky. And I'm curious, for you, you've been with Photify longer than I have, and you've been in this, business development position. Like, how has it been for you, communicating with some of the people that you've onboarded, and what are some of the most common questions that you get from them around implementation and rollout and sort of encouraging adoption, right?
Yeah.
Because encouraging adoption to me is one of the biggest pieces to bringing on a new software.
Mhm.
You know, oftentimes I've seen with certain people, they'll just get frustrated and stop, and then you have this tool that the company's paying for, it
Yeah.
isn't used, and it's just like,
Yeah. Well, I would answer that question in two ways, because a lot of my role is, business development focused on our partners' success. So working directly with our enterprise partners and those brands to understand, who is our internal advocate. And sometimes it's just identifying that one individual that is going to be, my key point of contact in that space, so that through them, I can start to give them the tools and any of the training materials, tutorials necessary to help deliver that through their teams. Now, the other answer to that would be, where I'm working directly in customer acquisition. So that means that I'm making sure that not only does their team understand how to use our backend portal, but that in the customer acquisition phase, that all of their users and that distributed workforce know how and where to access those. So we've developed a few different tools at this point, and I think that's just kind of been through the learning phase of data surveys. I love them. The more that we can do, the better, because you can always make assumptions about your customer, make assumptions about what people are wanting, but unless you're asking them directly and really putting yourself in their shoes, their assumptions at that point. And so through surveys and through really trial and error, we found that there's kind of a mix of several different things that worked really well. And it kind of goes back to my point earlier about meeting people where they're at. So we also will do monthly webinars, bi-monthly webinars. So one webinar that just says, here's the first baby step. Here's how you sign on. Here's how you get started. And then we'll elaborate into other webinars, once a month that we'll focus on key features of the app, or find opportunities within the landscape that might say, here's a new Instagram feature that just launched, and here's some training that can really help you in that. On a broader scale, though, we look at webinars. I spent a lot of time researching LMS systems, which are learning management software. Was really surprised to see how much is out there, how many different programs are out there, and was fortunate to land on one that I really felt not only gave us the data as on the back end, so we can understand how people are learning through assessments and really the progress that they take throughout those modules, but it gives them a structured course. So the idea that they're building on this experience, where the bottom line, we want people to get started. So we want to take the fear out of getting started. And I think sometimes that's half the battle, is when you put a program in front of somebody. And even I remember I'm an Asana junkie right now, but when I first landed there, I'm like, okay, slow down. Let's start with one piece. So you build on that experience. And using an LMS software really allowed us to make a structured program, but then also something that was more self-serve for those users to be able to go through and say, all right, I got a specific question about how to use X. It's right there for you. Of course, there's also email drip campaigns that I love some good automation. And so it meets people where they're at when they're like starting to create something, and you want to make sure that they're well trained on how to. So we've created different email drip campaigns based on actions that they take either in app or on the website. We've also created private Facebook user groups for some of our individual partners and brands. And what I love most about that is it almost elaborates and gives me an opportunity to elaborate on those customer surveys, because I can communicate directly with my customers. And that is all information that I can take back to our home office teams to really, allow them kind of this, straightforward feedback from their people. So it's really been a mix for us of using data to make those decisions on how best to train so that their customers know how to utilize our program, but then also internally finding ways to find that advocate, ensure that because it's typically I'd say a team of 2 to 3 people that'll manage our program internally, spend a few hours a month on it, managing things. And it becomes easier and easier, especially with the amount of assets that we have, available to them. But we take the time at the beginning to make sure that they are really understanding how to navigate things. And I love some monthly touch points. So the more communication I can have with them, the better. And I think just being available is always a strong suit. So I'd say the biggest takeaway for that, to make it short, is meet people where they're at, provide different options, and finding those internal advocates too.
Totally. I love that, finding internal advocates. I feel like one of the biggest saving graces on a team is having that one person, right? That's
Yeah.
just leading the information taking from the company that is rolling something out in your company, right? So having that is just wonderful, because all of a sudden they're in direct communication with you all the time. And then they're in direct communication with each of the team members that is maybe struggling to adopt this new thing, right?
Right.
And yeah, that's awesome.
Do you have, I guess, from your own personal insights working, even the past from different sales teams, what would you say is the adaptation rate of distributed teams, or implementation? How long does it really take for them to grasp?
Um, I think, it's several months actually, like,
Yeah.
sometimes, especially with distributed teams, like, um, you know, when you got people that are in different places and they have a set of goals on a daily basis that they're sort of trying to achieve,
Mhm.
um, and you know, on top of that, they're supposed to implement this new tool that they're going to be running all the information that they're going to be sharing with the entire team through. It starts to get a little bit tricky. So I think, like, going back to what you said, like, eventually there is total adoption because you have to do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like, some people are doing it faster than others, and the people that are doing it faster are usually angry at the people that are doing it slower. They're like, come on,
Yeah.
get with the program. But I think that, like you said, having that one key person that really is sort of like a points person, and it might be like, it might be the team leader's assistant or something,
Yeah.
and they're kind of just in charge of downloading the information
Mhm.
and taking, like, the tools that you mentioned right now, like having that set of tools, the management system that you can sort of share with that key player on a team will
Yeah.
make a world of difference, because all of a sudden they're bringing that in and dispersing it to the team instead of just taking their own notes and saying, well, I figured this out here and there, you
Yeah.
know?
We saw that happen organically with some of our partners as well. So we work a lot in the direct selling space as well as real estate and franchise. And to that point, we saw that in different levels of consultants or distributors or suppliers, within the direct selling space, or even brokers and agents, that they kind of took that role on themselves and they said, here's a great tool. I've got a team of, 10 or 5 or maybe even 100, those are all, it's very various, but they would take it upon themselves to learn that and distribute that across their team. So it's interesting where, you find that key contact internally within a corporation, but then it kind of starts to take shape on its own within those distributed teams too. What are your thoughts on gamification with a distributed workforce?
I love gamification. Like, I've always loved it. I think it's a great sort of way to, and you know what, in other teams we've used it, especially when bringing something new on. It's like, whoever can upload all of their contacts into the system by
Yeah,
Friday gets a $5, I don't know, whatever you get, right?
something.
It's fun. It's fun. And it's like, I love that type of stuff. I think it's a great way to go. It makes learning fun. And which is what learning should be, especially right now. Like, people are working from all over the world and in this completely new capacity. And I think sometimes it gets really lonely. And I think that gamification is a great way to reunite teams. All of a sudden you're seeing who's doing what. There's usually a leaderboard where, you're doing a regular check-in and letting
Yeah,
people know where you're at. And what you bring to the table when you do that, right? Because, like, there's going to be a number 1, there's going to be a number 10, right? And that number 1, and all the way down the line, end up sharing their learnings with the team, and then that's actually what ends up really teaching everybody else. So
yeah.
it's like a mix of having that one point person and then just, like, really finding ways to make sure that that team that's bringing on whatever you're bringing to the table
Mhm.
is really excited about it and staying excited about it, you
Yeah.
know?
Two things that come up for me with that is, in any new training, you're kind of leveling the playing field across in an organization.
Yeah.
It's new for everybody. So it could be the vice president sitting next to you, a new marketing coordinator, an intern, and they've all kind of have to learn the same thing. So I think there's an interesting opportunity for culture building. Like you were kind of mentioning that there's it brings everyone down into the same space. It makes it fun because at the end of the day, I mean, if this isn't something that pertains to maybe, the job that they do on a day-to-day basis, but it's something that they have to learn, then gamification could make it fun for them. Like you said, if it's $5 or if it's a gift card or, whatever it is, it's good to motivate people. And half the time, especially with distributed workforce and sales folks, they're probably already motivated by some sort of incentive too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any incentive. I think that like as a salesperson or somebody who's into like, I mean, you come into a job wanting to win something, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, how do I become the best? And sort of instilling that, you instill that in different ways. And I think that, learning something new that is ultimately going to benefit you and the rest of your team is something that should be incentivized. And
Right.
it should be a fun thing to do.
Yeah. And it can go across so many different industries too,
Yeah.
tech or enterprise, medical, whatever, I think it relates to a lot of different industries and teams and development there too. So, well, I know we want to keep these somewhat short, and I really hope that we can get some feedback in the comments section. I opened it up by saying when you're interviewing your customers, you can't make assumptions. It's always great to get feedback, and would love to hear what others in the industry and across industries have done in creating different training programs and their experience in that space of organizational change management, even down to some of the key metrics that they measure for, I think can be interesting too. So Jorge, any other last thoughts on training for success here?
Just keep trying,
What is the saying, measure twice, cut once or something? I feel like that kind of relates here.
There-
Maybe.
there's
I'm not
something
great at idioms, so
you should like just put it out there and let other people interpret it and take it for what it's
I
worth.
like that. I like that. Awesome. All right. Well, I'll conclude on that, and excited to do more of these podcasts. And if anyone has any listeners that are listening to this, you have feedback, drop it in the comments. And same thing goes if there's some other topics that you want to discuss in the landscape of branded content, enterprise organizations. We love to chat, and we look forward to doing more of these. So Jorge, thank you for hopping on here, and look forward to the next one.